From New York, you are listening to Extra Time. I am Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, David Goss, Matt Doyle. I'd like to introduce the Wiebe Sicko collection coming to MLSstore.com. Basics with the MLS logo on it in honor of Rob Lowe. So just in time for the holidays, head over to MLSstore.com. They've given me my own collection.
He's referencing the Rob Lowe.
No, I understand
NFL
the reference,
meme.
but like, have people not been out here wearing straight MLS logos for 8 years before? This is the most Wiebe. This is Wiebe being the Leagues Cup guy. Wiebe 9 years later being like, "This is my thing."
It wasn't
That's
9 years
your
later.
thing.
It's from the start. It has always been my thing.
That is.
I wore an MLS hat for years before anybody thought about it. I've been drinking out of MLS Crest cups since the womb.
This is fake. I want this to be known. One, it's fake. Two, on the day that I acquired my NBA League hat to complete my collection of Rob Lowe gear, I have an MLB umpire hat. That's how committed I am to
You have a
being
Leagues
neutral.
Cup ball boy shirt.
Ball person.
That's in the next.
Respect.
That's in the next capsule collection for the Wiebe Sicko.
Wow.
It's not real. I wish it was.
Also, what's with this hat? Are we allowed to wear team
sickness
stuff?
at the Wiebe household? Unexpectedly, I had to take a younger son to school. Didn't have time to do the hair, so.
Well, what is the hat?
It's it's Jayhawks, baby.
I don't think you're allowed to wear such controversial.
This is an Adidas
divisive stuff.
An Adidas Jayhawks golf hat. I knew you'd love it.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked.
Yeah, offseason has begun. It is official. MLS Cup in the books. We don't have any mail from crew fans reliving MLS Cup. They probably don't need to. They were there at the parade on Tuesday. They experienced it. They did the whole massive thing.
Too drunk to write.
We got a tweet from a Columbus fan, who broke, I believe, his wedding ring.
Correct.
Cheering and drumming during MLS Cup. He
How
said
do you
both
think,
me and the crew are officially getting new rings.
You
this
think
week.
drumming? I was thinking pounding
Zero
the
idea.
back of
Love
a
it.
chair.
Scares me because I thought they were unbreakable, hence why I like to throw mine around. But was stoked about it.
His was pretty intricate, though.
Yeah,
it
was
had
nice.
some, there looked like
There was some
welding
movement
had been
there.
done. That's not a single piece ring.
Yeah.
But a lot going on here. Free agency is open. Reentry draft is coming. The waiver order has been revealed, and that has lesser importance than it ever has. The
San Diego
SuperDraft
signed a goalkeeper, so we got to keep our eyes
I
on
did see
that.
I did see that one. Keep your eyes peeled. What's he doing for the next year? No idea, but they got him in on the books. SuperDraft next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. I'll be hosting. Matt Doyle on the in the studio with us, Sasha Kleshin, Devin Kerr, Miguel Gallardo, and then Kalen Kyle doing interviews. So whole first round, 30-minute pregame. Commissioner Don Garber there to do his customary opening remarks. One of the best days of the year. I know it has lesser importance maybe than it has in the past, but you still get impact players, maybe just not in mass. And most importantly, it is the beginning of something for a ton of guys that have been dreaming about it for their whole lives. For them, for their coaches, for their families, for all the people that have supported them. It's a huge day to hear your name called. So
It's also like a flag to fans being like, your team is serious. Teams that take the draft seriously have been good
Yeah.
because it means you're a completely serious club top to bottom. Teams that don't have been bad.
I mean, that's not really true, right? LAFC don't do much with the draft. They haven't done anything since 2018.
Fair.
But
The Galaxy were like
Philly
the kings of not taking it seriously. And
the Galaxy
it took them
have
down.
not. The Galaxy have not had a significant draft pick since 2011.
But they won 3 MLS Cups with draft picks, and then they decided draft doesn't matter, and it took them down.
I'm trying to give you the context here because your statement is still wrong,
Fair.
right? The Galaxy have not taken it seriously, and they have mostly been bad over the past 8 years. Philly do not take the draft seriously and haven't since 2018. They have been mostly excellent.
well, let me marry these perspectives here because you can ignore the draft, all good.
Yep.
But you probably need to have a active and productive academy system that is churning out bottom of the roster spot contributors.
Bottom or even top of the roster
Correct.
spot.
Oh, and the cliff is coming for Philly. We don't know how we're going to talk about them. We don't know how they're going to rebuild and do what they're going to do. But like part of the cliff coming is the team is not as deep, does not have the next option. And part of that was that they've given up on an avenue to get players, although they did get Donovan.
Right.
So they have used
But
it.
they didn't even draft him.
They signed him.
They signed
Yeah.
him.
Just like Seattle with
drafted
Jackson
him.
Reagan.
Yeah.
Seattle does not take the draft seriously. They've over the past decade, Seattle have gotten the Roldan brothers from the draft, and That's pretty much it. But they got Jackson Reagan, who was drafted by the Chicago Fire, but not signed by the Chicago Fire. Chicago Fire are a very problematic franchise who don't take anything seriously. But they got Jackson Reagan. They put him in Tacoma in MLS Next. Well, I guess it was USL at the time, but MLS Next Pro is the pipeline from the
Seattle
draft.
Academy guy too.
Yeah. So the point is, there is always going to be talent in the draft. Some teams put more into finding and developing that talent than others. I personally would take it very seriously if I was running an MLS team, but guys like Ernst Tanner, Garth Lagerwey have had a lot more success than I have, and they don't really focus on the draft too hard.
There are contributors available. In particular, I think you look at center backs. There's some good left-footed center backs.
Center back, center
coming
forwards.
out of this. Goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Roman Celentano. The best, example of late is Patrick Schulte, who then went through MLS Next Pro. So you have a lot of ways to do this. There's always money in the banana stand. It's just not everybody's going to own a banana stand, Doyle.
Yeah. And the difference is, it's funny, we're going to be on the panel with Sasha. And Sasha came out of the draft and immediately became the best playmaker on a very good Chivas USA team. I think they won the Western Conference his rookie year.
Him and Brad Guzan.
Yeah, him and Brad Guzan came out the same year, right? Yeah. Or was Guzan the year before?
I think they were the same draft.
I think it was a different draft.
I think
I'm
it was
going to go
different.
check it right
But
now.
anyway, Sasha was a playmaker. He was a star coming out of the draft. And Lee Wynn had come through college. He didn't go through the draft because he had signed with PSV. Benny Feilhaber was a college guy, later became a star playmaker. You don't see those guys in college anymore, guys who can be the centerpiece of a really good team in the pros. What you see instead are guys who are role players who have to be able to amplify the skill set of the actual stars on the team, and like Duncan McGuire is a good example of this, role players who have the understanding of how to have their own skill set amplified by the actual stars on the team. And by that, I mean, like, Duncan McGuire is great. He doesn't make the game for Orlando. It's Facu Torres, and it was Mauricio Pereira, Angulo to a lesser extent, and the fullbacks who make the game for Orlando. And Duncan McGuire had to understand how to fit in that. It's a very straightforward process for a center forward compared to an attacking midfielder. That's why you see more center forwards come out of the draft over the past 10 years than attacking midfielders.
I will just throw out, your team could make a bunch of money. Tejan Buchanan obviously has made and will make the New England Revolution a lot of money because they drafted him. We're hearing some rumors around Danny Pereira. He is central to what his team does.
Yep.
He was an attacking player that then had to convert into a deeper player and change. But
you see that a lot. Guys who are star attackers in college have to learn how to be if you're a winger, you learn how to be a fullback. If you're an attacking midfielder, you learn how to be a six.
Which is where Next Pro will help.
Weebe's dying to talk.
I know. Which is
I just have examples on tweets of people saying these exact things. No.
But the thing about the conversion is your hope is you can convert the player in MLS Next Pro, give them professional minutes at a new position while they are learning how to play at the pro level as well.
And
Tommy
we're
Webb
at the point now
that
where it's, people are going to rate this draft as soon as it's done, and it's useless.
It's like a 5-year thing.
15, 20 years ago, you could do that. You could be like, this guy is going to come into MLS and immediately contribute. This guy probably isn't going to A, C, whatever. Now it's like, it's like a multiple year. Here's an example. Nkosi Tafari, Jackson Reagan, Ethan Bartlow, Jack Mayer, however you say his name, whose brother is in this draft, by the way. Like, they were all draft picks. I think other than Reagan, they were all first-round draft picks in like 20 and 21. And they all finally got into the rotation in like a significant way this year, 4 years into their careers. Like, that is the timeline for most of these draft picks.
I think Bombito will be one of those guys in a year or two. He's already he already got his Canadian cap. But that's what you talk about now he's going to find his position, find his level. When you look at teams that win in MLS, you have to fill in these roster spots. I think Doyle's point of helping the stars but it's from a cap point of view and from a skill point of view. Of like, you need to be able to afford an international center back, an elite number 6, a number 10, and then you still need to be able to fill in those spots around them. And that's where something like the draft, obviously we hope the academy even more, and you have to be able to build a competitive next pro team. It's not a coincidence that Columbus won this year.
Yeah.
Having a competitive next pro team, an environment where it matters for players and they're not getting overrun matters, and the Crew have a 27-year-old in central midfield at MLS Next Pro level to help guys.
Because he's going to raise the floor
Yes.
of every young player around him.
Yes.
Because like there's a level of professionalism. Yep.
2017, Miles Robinson, one of the premier free agents, possible PSV signing, 2nd overall. Abobasi, Yule, Gressel, Jack Elliott. 2018.
Who was number 1?
Abu Danladi.
Nice.
Yeah.
2018, Tristan Blackman, Chris Mueller, Brandon Bai, Brian White, Alex Roldan, all those guys in the
Do you
conversation.
remember who number 1 was that year?
So who did you say as the top pick?
Tristan was number 3 overall.
So LAFC's expansion year?
Mm-hmm.
It was João Moutinho.
Yes, as
the
we, I was
left
gonna say, we
back.
both spent some
And
time
he-
in this country earlier
He
this year.
actually, I mean, he became a very good MLS player. I think he's playing in Serie A now, right?
No idea. Look it up. 2019, Tajon Buchanan, Dewan Jones, Sean Nealis, 25th overall, Kamal Miller, 27th overall. Frankie Amaya was the number 1 pick
That's Spezia.
that year, and Dane St. Clair and Hani Dotson were also selected.
Yeah, I think one of the things with center backs is like you scout, a lot of people scout locally. And so you'll see a lot of wins, which are like that player played in the area the club is in because you get to go see them in person.
Oftentimes, they get to train with you too in certain moments.
And in MLS, I think it's at this point, it's not a clean enough map where like the NFL is like every person knows everything about everyone. You pick your guy and you just go for it. It doesn't matter what spot. Tristan Blackman was not considered the 3rd prospect in that draft. LAFC felt super strongly about him. They stuck with him. Now you could argue he's had his ups and downs, but he is better than most draft picks.
Robbie Robinson in 2020 was number 1 overall, but Daryl
Chilean
DK was number
international.
5.
Chilean international.
No,
Robbie
fact.
Robinson. Yeah.
Fact. Lionel Messi teammate.
Well, you already know whatever center forward Orlando picks is going to score
Yeah,
a
look,
million goals.
Henry Kessler, to go to your center back point. Alistair Johnson, who was sold for a bunch of money, plays for Celtic now and played in the World Cup. Tafari was 14th overall in that 2020. 2021, Danny Pereira, to go back to that, he was number 1. Javane Brown played a ton of minutes for the Whitecaps.
Who was
over the
number
course
2
of,
that year?
Few years.
Calvin Harris.
And who was number 3?
3
Philip
was to the
Mayaka.
Rapids. Yeah, Mayaka.
This is a Mayaka hive right
Yeah.
here. This is
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
Mayaka energy
Big
for a
time
while.
Mayaka energy.
Go Crown
Jackson
Legacy.
Reagan, 33rd overall, was a 2nd rounder. In 2022, Ben Bender, Salentano, O'Farson, Keller, Ian Murphy, even like Siki Sabalang was 28th overall. Kevin O'Toole was in the 2nd round, and Patrick Schulte was in that draft as well. And then last year, Andrew Privet was number 69 overall in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
He's like your number 1, hey, whoa, deep rounder that actually made something of himself here. But to go to the transition, and this is what Tommy Webb was hitting us about. He's an RSL fan, said, hey, Loffelson has been good for us, been a role player. But Emeka Anelli as well, who was a forward in college in the Ivy League and became an outside back and played, 21 games for RSL this year.
Privet, I think, converted to center mid like 2 months into the offseason, or center back. He had never played center back before.
Yeah.
Patrick Agimang, speaking of a hive. We're all about Agimang in these parts. Bombito has potential. And then Max
Shout
Arston
out
is
Rhode
one
Island.
I want to point out
Or
before we
Connecticut?
get to the Super Draft. Who?
I
New
think
Hampshire.
Agimang's from Connecticut.
He's from
played at
Connecticut,
URI.
and he played at Eastern Connecticut
Yes.
and then transferred to URI.
Go Rams.
Bombito is UNH. So, yeah, that's all up there in the New England is
Nice.
popping people out. But Mac Arston is the last one I'll throw out here. Number 14 overall, contributed to the Crew this year, but he was the first player drafted out of MLS Next Pro. So I'm very curious to see if that's a trend starter or just like a one-time thing that the Crew were like, oh, yeah, we could do this. Why not?
I'm tuning into the draft just to see those moments where all of you have no idea what's going on, which was when Max Arston got drafted.
100%.
Because it wasn't just you guys. It was a lot of executives in MLS going, what just happened? Including
can
San
do
Jose.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
And Columbus being like, we already saw him play. We already know he's good enough.
3 p.m. Eastern time, the MLS Super Draft, MLS Season Pass on Apple TV next Tuesday. On Monday's show, we will have Travis Clark, who is as comprehensive a college soccer expert as there is in this country, to talk us through some of the prospects and give you a actual preview of the guys that could be drafted. Before we jump into today's show, we have a ton of topics, the most MLS-y move possible. The team that we're watching the closest this offseason will play a little free agent matchmaker, do the coaching carousel because there are some updates there. Sando Schwartz is now the confirmed head coach of the New York Red Bulls. And then we have a grab bag of random goodies at the very end. Big thank you to everyone who hit us up on Twitter. Something I've always wanted to do, and I'm just going to do it, and we'll see if it continues. The MLS podcast shout out. Fede in Torino, MLS Soccer Italia just ended its 5th season and is approaching 200 episodes. Grazie mille for enjoying this league with us, guys. Should I continue that?
Yeah, I like that.
You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. In Italy.
He says with 1
5
show
years
left in the year, should I continue?
Well, there's another year. Time doesn't end. By the way, speaking of Italy, goodbye, Giorgio. He knew. Come on, he knew. He was giving us the money quotes on the podium.
Wow.
Am I going to listen to my head or my legs or my heart? It's like, Giorgio, you had a slickly produced retirement video fired up, bro.
My guess was he was still acquiring some of those trading cards for the video, so he couldn't retire until he had the complete set.
Yeah, the paninis.
So if he didn't get them all, he probably would have come back. Hence the 6 months a year. Like, what was the timeline on it? So once he got all the trading cards, he could make the video.
Yeah, had some, needed to acquire the drones at Juve so they could do the...
Also love that, like, it's all him scoring
lift?
goals. Like, come on. You don't have to. Don't kowtow to that. You're a defender.
Yeah, give us those moments. Just crushing people,
Yeah.
Giorgio. All right, before we dive in, what's the best way to follow the MLS offseason? From 3 sickos to tens of thousands of sickos on a good day.
Reddit MLS.
Listening to the show.
That's the best way.
Yeah, Reddit MLS is a good way.
Following Tom.
Yeah,
Twitter.
at Tom Bogert.
Yeah, it's transfer season, and Tom is Tommy Scoops.
Tom's alive.
Tom's alive.
He's
But
never
also- but
felt
also-
so alive.
but
He
also-
got engaged like 3 months ago, and
Also
this is his
dead,
adrenaline
though.
high.
He's alive, but he's like like a zombie.
That's who
he's
he
a
is.
transfer zombie.
Yeah.
I would say just having an athletic subscription has been a good thing.
Yep.
Overall, Paul Tenorio did a piece today on the competition committee, I believe.
Yep. Joe
Set the
Lowry's
laws.
been doing great work at Backheel.
Yeah.
He has not slowed down, even though the offseason is here.
Slow down, Joe, or don't. Up to you, man. Yeah, there's look. Any of us are going to be retweeting anything we see, so that's also a good way of just like, hey, whatever retweets come through.
Maybe found a way to say follow me.
I said us. Any of us. It's a collective. All right. Most MLS-Y move, rumor, thing of the offseason.
Oh, and go to MLSsoccer.com.
Yes. An MLS season pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a given. But
Yeah.
it's good. Good call. And subscribe to Extra Time if
There
you've
you
gotten
go.
this far through various sundry of MLS ridiculousness. Here we go. Speaking of, Nashville opened up the lemonade stand. International roster spots for sale. 5 of them sold after the trade window opened for $825,000 in GAM. Here comes New York City FC to pick up 2 2024 spots. Here comes Nashville to trade them to Charlotte FC. They also got 2 in 2024. And St. Louis City got 1 as well for various prices, depending on the bulk of the order. It costs more to get 1 than it does to get 2.
So last year, at the beginning of the offseason, international spot was going for between 125 and 150.
No.
And
No,
it ended
more.
out at 225. No, at the end. It changed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, demand lessons because if you're not
Point
going to use
being,
it.
where's Nashville's rust to get rid of these spots they don't have to use? Why'd you not wait to the end of the offseason when teams are in a pinch and then they start forking over 100 to 150,000 more?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I have different numbers, right? What I looked at last year was that the price was pretty steady between 200 and 250K.
Interesting.
Yeah. Either way, I agree with you. It seems like Mike Jacobs sold lower than because like aggregated all together, you made the point that like if you get 2 together, it costs $162,500 in the Nashville
like-
Costco.
Yeah, it was
but
like- yeah.
if it's 1, then you're paying $175. That's what St. Louis City paid. Either way, $165,000 each is less than they were going for last year, which leads me to believe Mike Jacobs might know something about what's happening in terms of international roster slots in MLS, and perhaps there would be something that would decrease their value on the market. But I don't know. That's just me. Markets aren't entirely rational all the time.
If you're
The
Nashville,
other thing, let me just throw out, the other thing is expansion teams would normally make it harder, which there isn't one this year because they need to acquire domestic players to fill a full roster. And so this year should be a little bit less tight than last year because you don't have a new team filling in roles, and then you have to replace the guys you lose.
If you're Nashville, speaking of the market, given your activity in the international roster spot bonanza, is part of your job as like the AGM or whoever it is to have like the most comprehensive breakdown of all the roster spots in the league of other teams to understand what the market looks like? Yeah. Like other teams might not, they probably have it, but they're probably not pouring over it. I feel like you hire an analyst because they're just generating like 1 million in this every year based on just international roster spots. Now, if you're Hani and Mukhtar, you might be saying, would be dope if you would fill some of those with high quality attackers.
But I think if you look at the point being, if you look at the Nashville roster, if you can provide Hani $1 million player or $1 million more on top of what you were going to spend
maybe a
for
trade
one, then it's fine because the rest of their team is already built. They don't need to fill 5 spots.
No.
They need to fill
Fair.
1 or 2. They need to do it at a high level, but they need to do that correctly, which we didn't really see last year.
Well, that was very MLS-y of them. I also thought it was very MLS-y of Josh Cohen, who is a goalkeeper who's played at the highest level in Europe, played in the Israeli Premier League, but also in Champions League with Maccabi Haifa. Apparently there was like a disagreement with him in Atlanta. They filed a complaint, and now reports starting from Kyle Bongura, and then, of course, Tommy Scoops confirmed he's signing with Atlanta. So file the report, come back to the well. It's apparently where I want to go in the first place. Dave, most MLS-y move of the offseason so far?
I would just say fullback season in general, that all that got moved in trade so far are pretty much fullbacks. But the 2 specific ones I think I mentioned on last show, Juan and Aaron Herrera, that both got traded on the first day of the window last year, both got traded on the first day of the window this year, and this time for each other. So that's always fun.
A connection that
it's
can never
probably
break.
less fun for Juan
Right.
and Herrera moving.
Speaking of fullbacks, Andrew Gutman seemed absolutely tickled pink to be going home to the Chicago Fire, who he refused to sign for. No, he didn't. They refused to sign him.
They refused to sign him, yeah.
Just a weird deal overall.
So Burgundy Wave does a great job covering a team that has been really bad, and it is really hard. They did, in their tweet at least, did not read the full article, say fan favorite Andrew Gutman. Andrew Gutman was there for what, like 3.5 months?
So he was pretty frank in a lot of the post-game.
Okay.
Like any team that puts out actual post-game quotes, I read through them. He was willing to say stuff that I think,
Love that.
yeah, I think the fans
Love
love
that for the
that
Fire,
as
too.
well.
For the community,
Yeah.
obviously, for 2 bald guys.
Yeah.
Shout out Andrew Gutman.
I did see, no offense to Andrew Gutman, but I did think of you guys. Gutman put out the picture of him signing, and it was his whole family. Dad bald, brother bald.
Oh. Shouldn't be, though. Should come from the mother's side.
Interesting.
Genetic.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Didn't even think about it.
Keep
Doyle,
a third eye open.
MLS-y moment.
The most MLS-y moment thus far is, well, it's actually the least MLS-y moment is TQL Stadium lighting up for Miles Robinson's free agency visit. And it's not an MLS-y thing because free agency in its current form is very new to MLS. And each year, because the CBA has changed in terms of who gets access to free agency in this league, each year now we're seeing better and better players. Like you could make a really
Younger players.
better and younger players because you have to be 24 years old with a minimum of 5 years of service. So like guys like Omir Fernandez, Donovan Pines, like 24, 25 years old. Miles is a couple years older than that. He's also significantly better. This is one of the best center backs in the U.S. national team pool. I don't think he was great last year for Atlanta, but I think we all know that when he's at his best, he is a best 11 caliber, if not defender of the year caliber center back in MLS. We have never seen a guy like this in free agency before. We just haven't. Prime of his career. My understanding was that it was going to be PSV or Atlanta United on a DP deal, and DP deal in line with what Walker Zimmerman got as a DP from Nashville a couple of years ago. PSV makes a lot of sense because they are currently stomping a mud hole in the Eredivisie. They have 15 wins from 15 games. They just got through to the knockout rounds of the UEFA Champions League, which is not always a given for Eredivisie teams. In fact, it's pretty rare these days. And their GM is Ernie Stewart, who, of course, knows Miles Robinson well.
Americans.
And he's already got Ricardo Pepi and Malik Tillman and Serginho Dest on that team.
Did you see what Serginho did?
I did. The Ronaldinho, yeah, it was pretty sick. I thought it was just going to be a done deal.
It seemed like no way.
Yeah. But money talks. And Cincy are a team that is very smart about investing in their defense, investing in their back line. We've seen that already. And they have enough in attack that I think they feel comfortable doing this. Though I will also say, I don't think they're going to spend an open DP slot if there even is one open on Miles Robinson.
I don't know that
maybe
I don't know that they can.
Yeah,
based on the free agent rules.
Yeah.
Maybe in the way that Mike Jacobs seems to know something about international roster slots, maybe decreasing in value. Maybe Chris Albright knows something here about the amount of money that you're going to be able to throw at a player without necessarily making them a DP.
It is December 14th, 11:40 a.m. Eastern Time.
It's a moving target.
My understanding is that there will be some sort of press availability.
My understanding is there's a board of governors meeting happening right now.
Weeby's going to have to start hosting the show holding a newspaper in front of him to prove the exact moment.
The headline is this. That there could be a change that coming publicly soon, and that, of course, these teams are sort of operating under in a soft way.
An interesting way that I'm thinking about this. So one, for Cincinnati, which is like, why not? Because if you push Atlanta out of the game on him alone, that's a victory for you. That's an elite player in the Eastern Conference for a team that could be good.
Oh, we're getting perilously close to the beginnings of some NBA.
Yes,
right
we
here.
are. The other thing is, roughly, Miles Robinson made $1.4 million last year. You mentioned Walker Zimmerman, who's on about $2 million. I do wonder if for Cincinnati, the thought process is we're going to lose Brandon Vasquez. Let's increase our defensive ability and sort of like take some of Brandon Vasquez was on roughly $1 million last year and take some of that and push it to defensive solidity and be elite on this side of the ball where they were very good, but be elite and then figure out the attacking half, figure out a Vasquez fill in at a lower level because you don't need as big a player there.
Also, if you sell Brandon Vasquez, you acquired him for what was it, 150 at the time? So your inlay, your GAM, you might be able to have the money based on just that sale alone to say, yeah, we can give this guy the money.
And the other
buy it down.
The other thing is that since Pat Noonan and Chris Albright got there, they've done a really good job of developing young players. So they're probably pretty confident in their ability to find another. Brandon Vasquez was a distressed asset, right? He was clearly talented, but was not getting that opportunity under the previous regime. As soon as they got it, he started banging in goals immediately, and they probably feel like we could do something close to that with some of the guys out there.
But thinking about Miazga and Miles Robinson playing in a back three together behind Nobodo, it is exciting because I think you're in a situation there where Miles can go and hunt. He can step forward. He can counter press for you. He can be the one in rest defense who's the furthest forward to win the first ball and get the attack going. And then you talk about set pieces as well. They're going to be dominant, especially if Barrial comes back. But even if he doesn't...
Well, there's more game for you, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. Lucho can play those balls in, and then you've got Miazga and Miles Robinson to get on the end of them. So it would be a little bit different from how other teams have been built. I think Cincinnati has a clear idea of who they want to be, and Chris Albright comes from a team that has Jakob Glesnes and Jack Elliott as the core of what has been one of the best teams. And so there's an understanding of what center back can be in Major League Soccer and what you can build around it. So if this went through, if this happened, it'd be a pretty cool move.
If this happened, it's a big move in terms of the balance of power in the Eastern Conference, but it's a landmark free agency signing in MLS history.
And he doesn't even have to go to a Raptors game. It's so new.
Steven Richter threw this out, and we can discuss or dismiss. Seems like post-Copa America is the best time for Miles to head to Europe. Can you see an MLS team signing him but keeping the door open to transfer later? Are release clauses allowed in MLS? No idea on that one. I don't think so. Miles could force he could force a move. Maybe he says, I'll be here for 6 months. You get the transfer fee? I don't know.
6 months seems tough, but I would see a situation where you sign him to a 2-year deal and you say, we think if you want to, we are in a conversation where we're ready for you to go. If you want to go, my assumption would be you'd play through Copa America and maybe sign some sort of pre-contract or sell for the end of the year to go next January to sort of maybe reset the market for him.
But also, why go next January if you're Miles Robinson and you can go now, unless you're not getting the offers that you want? And that's a real possibility.
Or you want to ensure that you're going to start at Copa America to try and get back into that spot on the U.S. national team going into what will be a home World Cup.
Tommy Bogert. Sources, FC Cincinnati acquire MLS rights to Kip Keller from Austin for a third-round SuperDraft selection. Cincy has agreed a first-team deal with Kip Keller. Keller, of course, is selected number 5 overall in 2022, the same year that Celentano was selected.
Spoilers, do not think they're going to start Alvis Powell at center back in another playoff game.
Yeah,
I thought he was good.
He was fine in that game.
Yeah.
I don't think they would like to start him again in a playoff game at center back.
All right, we'll get to more free agency in just a second. What's the team you're watching closest this offseason, Doyle?
Orlando, because I think they're one piece away. And the fact that they mutually parted ways with Mauricio Pereira shows me that they understand what that one piece is. Now, they should have kept Pereira. I don't want to say should have. It would have been nice in terms of depth and grinding through the regular season and Concacaf Champions Cup and Open Cup and Leagues Cup and, all the other stuff that these teams have to deal with. It would have been nice if they had been able to keep Pereira as a depth piece, but they need an elite 10. They need an elite chance creator. That was the difference between them and I think the best teams in the league. And I think they have 2 DP slots open. They had the lowest salary in the league last year, and even if you prorate the transfer fees that they had spent on guys like Pereira and Facu Torres, obviously, Cesar Araujo, even if you prorate that, they were still a bottom 8 roster in terms of across-the-board spend. They have the ability to go out and get an MVP caliber number 10. Now, maybe not MVP next year because I think Messi's going to win that. But that next tier, that Lucho Acosta, Henny Mukhtar,
the
Carlos
non-Messi
Vela,
tier.
Yeah. They have the ability to go out and get a guy. And that ownership group is they're not broke. So a guy like Giovanni Lo Celso, who's Messi's international teammate, World Cup winner. He's 27 years old. He's on the roster for Spurs. He does not play. He has gone out on loan repeatedly to La Liga teams, and he has played pretty well. But MLS teams can come in and say, we will build a team around you. This is your team. You're not going to get that with Real Betis. You're not going to get that with, Celta Vigo. This is going to be your team. You will be the star and the guy who you want to be just like. He plays down the road from you. You'll be his rival. I think that's a selling point. And I think MLS teams can also probably pay more than non-Premier League teams for a guy like Lo Celso. Or, Darius Carita, the Uruguayan playmaker who's been so great for Flamengo for so long. He's a couple years older, but he's been durable and he's arguably the best playmaker on the biggest team or the second biggest team in South America these days. I'm talking a profile like that of a number 10 for Orlando City. They have to go out and get it done because they are so close. They were 63 points last year. They were, Open Cup the year before that. They have to also bring back Angulo and especially Cartagena. I think they can make a couple of signings in the free agency market. We've talked about Dax making a ton of sense for them there. They do need to get another
a Ladero even, if you're talking about guys that
fits the
who are guys that Oscar would love.
Yeah, fits the culture for sure. But Ladero can't be the answer as their number 10. They need to go out and get a guy in the prime of. They need to go out and get what Ladero was 8 years ago when he signed with the Sounders. And given how close they are and how much fun I had watching them last year, and I have affection for Oscar Pareja because he's been such a great coach in this league for so long, and he's never gotten out over that hurdle for the big game. I want to see them load this roster up.
I mean, if putting together a PowerPoint. No state income tax, the outlets that you can shop at. Pretty good
Amusement
weather
parks for the family.
Yeah.
Good cardio, running from alligators, all that.
Basically, you're
Wildlife, in other words.
You're pretty much just in a battle with Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, basically, for players like this. Like, you look at the Galatasaray lineup, you're like, should be MLS DP, should be TAM player, should be MLS DP.
The other thing I was thinking about in terms of Orlando, but also LAFC in a certain extent, is like the mirror that the Crew put up to them in the playoffs in some ways, especially Orlando, I think, because you had the home game.
Yeah.
You had every opportunity. And you had a team that came in and just took you out of the game in terms of control, in terms of creating the goal-scoring opportunities that you want, in terms of just entertaining your home fans in the biggest game of the year. So, yeah, like let's flip that switch. Let's up it, Orlando. Let's see what you got. What about you, Dave?
I think for me this was a little bit tough just because you have teams that have opening. San Jose has 2 DP spots open. I don't have a ton of belief that they're really going to use them. You have some other teams like Seattle where it feels like we kind of already know.
It's like a piece or two, right?
Where they're going.
Yeah.
So I think Houston's an obvious one because what could they do and how could they upgrade? The one I landed on was Atlanta, which it may not even be a DP signing, but you already have Cohen. You're in the conversation with Miles Robinson. What can they do at central midfield to upgrade and make things easier next to Muyumba? What does Garth Lagerwey continue to do to this roster? I mean, Sean De Silva was brought in on loan and ended up being one of the better acquisitions over the course of the summer. If things do change, like we keep mentioning but don't know, is Saba Lobachenitsa still a DP at the end of the offseason? And can you fill another spot like that? There's space for Atlanta to build, and then there's the Thiago Almada question. And that's going to be every show we do of, this rumor, this connection, what's the number, what's the club, what does he want to do, what's Copa America look like for him? It's going to be talked about until he leaves, which is a credit to them and a good thing, but a negative thing as well at times. So I just think overall Atlanta is going to be one that we're going to keep looking at and talking about. And if they lose Miles Robinson, who's the next guy there that they use to fill in that spot?
Well, Lisa Abram didn't really live up to some of the resume stuff on that side. Speaking of Almada, and just to bring it back to Orlando quickly, Doyle, do you think they'd be more likely to go with that young player, big transfer fee, high ceiling, or, you brought up Lo Celso, like a 27-year-old, this is the place that you stay, you're going to be our guy for the next 4 or 5 years?
For Atlanta?
No, for Orlando.
It's a good question.
And by the way, for Atlanta too.
Yeah, Garth Lagerwey explained his point of view on this a couple of years ago. He said when he looks to sign a DP, he looks for a guy who's 26, 27 years old and has already left home. So not signing an Argentine from an Argentinian league, signing an Ladero. So Uruguayan who had played with Ajax, who had success in Brazil. So he was a man of the world at a very young age, and that fit perfectly for the Sounders because he bought into the idea of, this is going to be my club, build around this. I would expect Atlanta to look for someone like that. And Lo Celso actually fits for for Lagerwey's vision of what a DP should be, and we certainly know Atlanta have the budget. With Orlando, Facu Torres, they got him at 21, 22. That was a big spend, and he's been really, really good. Not quite a build an elite team around him good, but very, very good. I think they've just been more willing to look for that younger cadre of players. I mean, even when Oscar was managing at FC Dallas, they brought in Mauro Diaz at
Fabian
Castillo, but Diaz was the number 10 centerpiece. I think they got him at 22, 23.
I would just say, so if I was working in Orlando, my pitch would be that sustainability of a club, being able to spend money and sell. If you bring in, let's go with Lo Celso that you're talking about, I think you will make money on Facu Torres, Duncan Maguire, and Araujo.
Yeah.
So while Lo Celso, and we'll probably have some sell on at the end if that's your desire, that you never want a player to end as retired or walk away from a contract on your team.
Just keep Galatasaray and Fenerbahce on.
For sure. You can probably sell him to Brazil or Mexico or potentially for a little bit to Argentina.
But the point is, an elite number 10
will make you the money back.
Makes your $8 million striker a $12 million
And also,
striker.
isn't
Duncan Maguire goes from draft to whatever you make off him.
Isn't this what the U22 spots are ultimately for. And if, let's just say the rumors are true that now it's not going to be a requirement that you have basically a minimum DP or a young DP to activate all 3 spots, and you have 3 spots to play with low cap hit and potentially a high transfer fee. Now, there is still a limit on that. Like a Thiago Almada level transfer fee is not going to get you a U22 player. You have to be a DP. But most teams aren't spending the Thiago Almada number. I mean, that is like a historic number. So it makes complete sense to me that in present and future MLS, you want to develop players. Those players are likely to be either homegrowns with a high ceiling that might get a U22 deal if they perform, or prospects you bring in, but you have to have the structure to maximize their value.
Yeah.
And that also helps you win games, which ultimately is the lifeblood of everything. Like, I don't think Atlanta fans care that much about the number. At least they shouldn't, in my opinion. They should care about how their club is going to perform for the next decade. Win championships.
Yeah, the one that just popped in my head is like you sell Tejan Buchanan and then potentially Dylan Barrero because Carlos Heel makes them better.
Right.
And makes the game easier for them. And they look good and they're able to perform. And you're not going to make money off Carlos Heel in that way. You are going to sell tickets. You are going to win things. You are going to play in more games, more playoffs, championships, Concacaf games. All these things help a team make money plus selling gear. But like that's the pitch. And so I think if you're in the Orlando setup and that's what you want to do, that's the pitch you're making is if we want to be a selling club, we need quality on the field to help us sell those players. And while you may not resell that one player, overall, it will be worth it and make the money. And this is, I think, a fan base that's like ready for that next step. Because I think the Mirror thing makes sense, which with Columbus, which is like, that was another knockout game where they didn't really show up until they were down a man and down a goal. And so you want a team that dictates and controls those moments and takes advantage. And they are the team, I've mentioned this, that's in danger of the Austin regression. The underlying numbers say they should have been 7th or 8th in the East. They finished 2nd. You have to avoid that. Way you avoid that is by making this sort of purchase.
I just jumped into my head, too, and to a lesser degree, you talk about Carlos Heel. I know Victor Wanyama got completely frozen out this year, and there's also Wilfred Nance's effect very clearly. But like having him as a piece that Georgi Mihailovic could build around, that you could have Ismail Kone play next to, that Alistair Johnson can be confident he can get forward into the attack.
I mean, we probably should have said Lucho Acosta. You already sold Brenner. You're potentially going to sell Vasquez and Barrial.
Yeah, there's a pretty clear history here. Team I'm watching. Speaking of open DP spots.
We know.
What?
Say it.
What?
LA Galaxy.
LA Galaxy, that's correct.
The
shrine is back,
the
baby.
Shrine it's an off-season shrine?
It's a full season shrine. It's just as of late, regular season shrine performance. Yeah, our expected results based on candles lit is
you don't want to
very
waste
low.
candles like that.
Very low.
Yeah.
We're burning
I can tell
a lot
you
of
as
wax.
I'm burning candles all week. You don't want to waste candles.
Yeah, we're burning wax for basically nothing at this point. The Galaxy have Ricky Puig, who would be a player that you would think you could build around. Maybe not in the same way like a prime era Ladero was, but has the talent, has the ability, get the right players around him, which they really have never done. But 2 open DP spots. Will Kuntz did a pretty good job with DP spots at LAFC, is now the GM. He says they were going to go a little younger in profile. Now, I don't know that means 18, 19, 20.
It just means in reference to them, which is they will no longer be a senior citizen team, hopefully.
Right. Yeah.
Not they have to be 18.
Right. It's not AARP.
Yeah.
It's just like, you've been around a little bit. You're 23, you're 24. You can withstand the rigors of the league. But
Chicharito was 32 when they signed him. Zlatan was obviously, 36, 37?
Douglas Costa.
Old.
Yeah.
Douglas Costa was 31 or 32.
He's 33 right now.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and like that is on the far of the curve of
Steven Gerrard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm just throwing names out there. It's historical. It's not just recent history. And like Ricky Puig was he was like, what? You doing what with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Be interesting. No, I think, look, if I had gotten to the doc first, I would have taken the Galaxy.
That's why I make the doc.
Yeah. You made the doc.
Yeah, I make the doc.
Yeah. They're the most interesting team because Will Kuntz has a track record in the league of being shrewd about signings, and the Galaxy really, really need that. The Galaxy have a history of spending, and they have, as you said, at least 2 open DP slots. They have a player that we all rate in Ricky Puig, who's like a centerpiece and just now needs the pieces around him. And it's a market and a team that people around the world know and want to play at. It seems like a perfect storm for them to have an incredible offseason. But, man, we've said that about the Galaxy a lot the last 5 years.
So, some moves that have already happened. Raheem Edwards back to Montreal for $400K in GAM. Canada. A return visit. Speaking of season of the fullback.
Yeah.
LA Galaxy also in negotiations per Tom and Paul Tenori to sign a Japanese right back, Miki Yamane. I may have messed that up. I'll get that figured out. From Kawasaki Frontale. He's won a couple, I think, Asian Champions Leagues while there. Has been sort of a fringe Japanese international, but a right back signing to replace, Caligari, whose loan...
Pick an international fullback.
Yes.
LA Galaxy love an international
I think
fullback.
Aude is still there, but I think Caligari got sent back, unfortunately, after the injury. And then Maria, our producer, says that Mexican media
Love it.
is ceding Carlos Vela to the LA Galaxy, which is the opposite of some of this profile stuff, age-wise, we've talked about, but very delicious in terms of storyline and just everything involved to see Carlos Vela
It doesn't make sense.
switch sides.
It does not
This
make
is a
sense.
Figo situation.
No, because Figo switched sides in the prime of his career.
Yeah, fair.
Right? This does not make sense from the Galaxy's perspective.
Is there any world in which it makes sense? Let's just try to build one, just for fun. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say you can sign him in a max TAM zone where you can be bought down.
Do you think that Carlos Vela, if he was willing to take that deal, that LAFC would not give it to him? That's the part that's hard. Is like, if he's not going to move, and he
For
doesn't want to
So here's the thing for LAFC. One, they did sign a 9 in the summer. They probably should sign another one. I guess there are issues with Denny Bawanga, but that seems
think Carlos
probably
Vela's gonna play
overblown.
as a 9 for
No,
LA
no, he
Galaxy?
shouldn't. I'm just saying he shouldn't. So you take the 9 away. You signed Stipe Biuk for $5 million, and then basically buried him on the bench. He didn't play like the second half of the season in any high leverage moments, basically at all. Am I wrong about that? Am I
No, you're right.
misremembering?
You're
Yeah.
right.
Oliveira clearly is the future on one of those wings, and Bawanga, who you got to keep, is the future on the other. So where's the space for Carlos Vela? You're not in Champions League, so you don't got to balance that anymore.
It's what we
Sorry,
talked about.
Champions Cup. My bad.
It's what we talked about on Monday's show. The space for him is to buy in to being a 35-minute a game, off the bench super sub. And as to David's point, that's all the Galaxy should be offering him, right?
Yeah,
and if
Fair.
if that's offers on the table from the Galaxy, you would think
Yeah.
LAFC would match that, or at least come close enough where Vela's like, yeah, I'm going to stay in black and gold.
Yeah, LAFC, I mean, Giorgio Chiellini made $1 million this year. He's leaving. Kellen Acosta, we know his contract's up on 1.3
But you've got to replace Kellen now, unless you think Bogusz.
Bogusz
Well,
and,
you
and
just-
the
all the
Bulgarian kid.
And all the players
yeah,
you just
yeah,
named
Krastov,
are
yeah.
under contract on the roster already. They are not putting out any expenditure to bring in any of the players you said. So in theory, if you think Aaron Long steps into Chiellini's spot, which probably makes you a worse team in those big moments because Chiellini's elite, but still covers at center back better than most teams, there isn't like a need of spend if they don't want to. They should. Let me make that clear. LAFC should go out, fill 2 DP spots, be great again, bring back Eddie Atuesta, be elite, get back on the ball, and do all these things. But to get to MLS Cup next year, in theory, they don't have to. And therefore, there should be space contract-wise for Vela if he's willing to accept that role.
But boy, if he went to LA, woo! Well, the other part of LA.
Let me ask this. If you're the Galaxy, let's say Chicharito's willing to take the same deal.
Yes,
Which one would you take?
I would take Chicharito.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
Because
The only reason to do this would be strictly
Marketing?
poking someone else in the eye and marketing.
if you're the Galaxy, though, you can't be focused on poking LAFC in the eye because the Galaxy they're a meme team, and they have been since 2016 at this point. It's been almost a decade. The only time they were relevant was when they had Zlatan, and they weren't relevant because they were winning games. They were relevant because they had Zlatan, and that's it. And it would be fun to jab LAFC in the eye, but it doesn't actually mean anything in the scope of the rivalry right now because It's all LAFC. It's all LAFC. They're the team that goes to MLS Cup every year. They're the team that actually wins trophies these days. They're the team that signs interesting young players. And granted, not always getting a ton out of them, but they're interesting and they improve and they go to play for Uruguay on, international dates. The Galaxy don't have any of that.
The Vela thing, if they sign him, would be like a
This
self.
is just
it's
such
like
a weedy segment, and I need it
self-own.
to stop. Like, the Galaxy are not
self-own.
interesting because they might sign Carlos Vela. They're interesting because they might actually do it right this year. Sorry.
You got him.
I win.
Yeah.
And Maria
Do you
loses.
wanna
'Cause
talk
now she
about-
has to edit that portion of the
Do
show.
you want to talk about the Super Draft for 25 minutes now to make you feel better?
No, I
How about the Champions Cup draw? Is that going to bring you up?
Yeah, we can segue to that.
All right, so in my fake Champions Cup draw yesterday
Doyle's
morning at
so
my kitchen
unhappy.
table. No, sorry, that was a terrible moment for me, but I did have fun. I thought it was a good one. We had Evan who says, "Give us your first impressions, early predictions." Mayan wants to know which MLS club is going to go the furthest, and yeah, let's dive into what we have here. The way the draw worked was 5 teams were already pushed forward, basically based on qualification to the round of 16. That was Pachuca, Robin Hood, who won the Caribbean competition, Alajuelense, Crew, and then Inter Miami. Alajuelense won the Central American one, Crew won MLS Cup, and then Inter Miami won Leagues Cup. So that's what pushed them through into those round of 16 moments. So you had teams in Pot A who were basically ranked the best on coefficient from within the region. Most of those teams were MLS or Liga MX teams. And then in Pot B, those were done together. A couple MLS teams were there, St. Louis and Vancouver among them, including the Canadian Premier League teams and others from around the region. So let's just start by bracket here. Pachuca is awaiting the winner of Philadelphia Union and Saprissa. The Union got a tough draw based on travel, based on pedigree, based on the matchup in the round of 16 with a guaranteed Liga MX opponent. That's a tough one.
Yeah, Purple Monsters, probably the toughest away environment in Central America.
It's not what it was, though.
100%, but it doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
It does not make it.
I mean, it's international competition.
But
Yeah,
It's not
it
supposed
doesn't
to be.
make it going to Calgary.
February at Calvary
Yeah.
might be a little bit frigid for Orlando City.
Tommy Wilden's boys coming after you, coming downhill. That is a great stadium, by the way. The Cavalry home stadium. It is like an old horse something.
Snowdrifts, could we get some of that?
Yeah, I don't know what it'll look like.
Yeah, February's an
I wonder
interesting
what
time.
I wonder how big the bubble can be for that one that they can put over.
TBD.
But for Philly, you've got to go to Costa Rica. You play Saprissa. You have to play Pachuca. Travel at altitude. Plus, we don't know what Pachuca's team will look like because they like to swap out every 2 years. But it could be bad. So yeah, I think they and the Revs got really tough draws as expected coming through in that first round. You have Kai for the Revs, who have a good history in this competition. Then you play Alajuelense, who have been the best in Costa Rica. And if you're lucky enough to get through all of that, there's a decent chance you're playing the winner of Chivas Club.
I mean, I think there's a basically guaranteed chance. America drew.
Oh, no respect for Forge.
Yeah, Esteli, Guadalajara, like Forge. Come on, you could do it. Chivas
They
falls
challenged
on their face.
Cruz Azul. They only lost.
Yeah,
I think they
you
got
could
a
do it. Why
result
not?
on the
Why
road.
not? But it's probably one of the two gigantes.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the other side, Toluca and Herediano will face off for the right to face Robin Hood, and that's who could be on the other side for the Union. Then the other side of the bracket here, Houston Dynamo, St. Louis. The winner taking on the Crew. St. Louis fans, I think, were a little disappointed by this, just because, first time into Champions Cup, and you want to play somebody you haven't played.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
get that.
It also is why Columbus and Inter Miami are the obvious picks of like who won. They both got buys, so the obvious pick of who will go the furthest. 2, there's the Columbus 100% will play an MLS team, so familiarity there. Inter Miami will play the winner of Nashville against I don't even know who.
Mocha, it's a Dominican team.
So there's a decent chance Inter Miami also. Either way,
But that's a rematch of League
close
Cup
travel.
final.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of juice in that one.
So the issue here is there's one Liga MX team in this part of the bracket. It's Tigres.
For the Crew.
Yeah.
And on the bottom side, it's Monterrey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not supposed to be. But I think last time the Crew got Monterrey in the first round in 2021 when Zelarayan picked up the second yellow or whatever and got suspended for the second leg, which I think there's large parts of those games where they outplayed Monterrey and felt they should go through. So you'd rather get them in the quarterfinal than in the opening round.
Tigres, by the way, if they win against Vancouver,
Do it, baby.
if Tigres wins, I don't know. Look, is Vanni Sartini not suspended? For
No,
those
I
games?
wasn't going to say that. Everyone's favorite game of the year was Tigres Orlando City.
I know.
In like
It
the
could happen in the round
opening
of
week,
16.
we have referenced it all season, and then we could do it again next year.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah, look, just remember on Concacaf Champions Cup, we had done different formats over the years. There, those of us that have been around a long time remember the group stage fondly, and also not fondly, depending on the moment. But all of these are 2-leg series. So it's home and away from round 1 to round of 16 to the quarterfinals, semis, and then, of course, the final. The final will be played on Sunday, June 2nd. Who gets the farthest? I know you said Inter Miami and Crew. It's got to be – it's hard not to pick Inter Miami.
Especially with the draw, especially with the way it lined up. I think it's more straightforward than for other teams. I would say Columbus, but last time Columbus won MLS Cup and went into CCL, I said they had the best returning roster in MLS history.
I remember that.
And they did not make the playoffs and got
New
smoked.
coach.
So I'm not going to do it again. You're not going to get me.
Different
I'm
era.
not going to let you spin me.
Who you got, Doyle?
I like Philly's chances, actually. They have gone on the road and handled Central American teams in a way that I'm not used to seeing from MLS sides. And they've done it consistently over the past 4 years now. I think that's part of who they are. And then the Pachuca team they're facing, Pachuca was not good this year in Liga MX. Their attacking midfielder is La Chofis, who was not good for for the Quakes for a while.
Love
They
this
do
for
have-
Chofis and all of us.
They have, they do have some good players. Like, I like Eric Sanchez a lot. I would love to see an MLS team buy him, but he might be sold to a European team over the next month or so. This Pachuca, they're consistently up and down. They have won a lot over the last 25 years. They've had a lot of bad years as well because they're a selling club. They don't have the money of a Tigres, a Club America, a Monterrey to always stay at that level. So I think the path for the Union is pretty clear to the semifinals, at which point they will likely face Club America, and it maybe ends there. But I'm not willing to write the Union off.
The word is that Inter Miami, unsurprisingly, are going to take that. CCC is their big one.
Yep.
That's what they want to win. They want to get to the Club World Cup. They want to have this moment in the region. So you would think they would put a ton into that.
My actual answer is Inter Miami.
It's the obvious answer. Yeah. By the way, Justin Myers said, I feel like I keep hearing about the Union's window closing. What can they do to keep that window open? What pieces do they need to be a legit cup contender?
It would be something new for them. It would be multiple players, right? Not just replacing what. So we think they're going to lose Kai Wagner and Alejandro Bedoya. They say they're still in negotiations with them. The Bedoya one seems hard to come back from, but I'm not inside the room, so I don't know. We think Julian Carranza will be sold, and Tyberibo is part of that replacement or not. But even if that was the case, they were not deep enough to compete with Club America in the past. They were not deep enough to beat LAFC in the past.
I don't think it was depth. I think it was lack of top-end quality.
Both things, it doesn't matter. If they're going to lose Julian Carranza, they need to sign 2 players to fill that. They need to get better. Top-end talent creates depth because it pushes the guys currently on the team further down.
I straight up think they just need 2 better forwards. Yeah, well, this is assuming Carranza gets sold, right? Then they need to, Tyberibo looks like a nice depth piece. Chris Donovan is a useful depth piece. Ura is not. He's not that guy in the biggest games. We've seen enough of it now. He's not a DP striker. They need 2 DP strikers, actual ceiling raisers, match winners. They have not had that. And they especially need it because Gazdag puts up box score numbers. He's not a chance creator. I know he's a number 10. He plays at the point of the diamond. He is not a guy who cracks open a defense.
And that goes back to left back. If you don't keep Kai Wagner,
right.
We know all the news around that, but also just the news around the free agency. But that's if you look at the underlying numbers, Kai Wagner is the engine of chance creation for them, whether it is in set pieces, which is a huge weapon, or from open play crossing.
And Mbaizo's a free agent as well.
Yeah.
So.
And Jacob Glesnes, sorry, Philly fans have yelled at me. I don't know why I always call it Jacob Glesnes. Also has, I don't know. There's been a little bit of uncertainty and sort of hey, we don't really agree with a lot of things happening around here vibes for the Union, which is out of character.
Yeah. But I think the point being if they lose pieces because those pieces are ready to move on or the contract situation, whatever, to get back to where they were would not be enough. And it won't be clean. Like, if you replace everyone at the same level, there's going to be time for everyone to get comfortable and everyone to get. So you need to get better this offseason if you want to maintain or push. And I think this is a team that would like to win a cup. Like, for all the compliments we have, they've won Shields, they've pushed for Shields, they've not won a cup.
Yeah. Free agent matchmaker time. This will start with Julian Gressel. Per Tommy Scoops and Paul Tenorio, Miami lead the race with New England trailing behind. New England selling Julian Gressel on coming home, both where he went to college at Providence in the, in the region there, and then also where his wife is from. Selling without a head coach. So it is what it is. What do you think? Miami, is that the checkmark
So it would have to
destination?
follow. It's at the point now where things would have to fall apart for it to not be Miami. 100% I expect him to be playing for Miami next year.
What does that mean for Miami as far as what he'll bring and also on the roster? I mean, you immediately look at Yedlin at right back and wonder if he's now available.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought of it like that. I thought Yedlin added a ton for them going forward because of his end-line to end-line ability. But he was the only right back on the team. I think they probably keep both these guys, though, because the idea is to compete across multiple competitions, and you need quality and you need depth. And if you have Julian Gressel and DeAndre Yedlin and whatever young kid they're bringing through their academy for the right side, then you don't really have to worry about that, and you can switch between a back four and a back three. Gressel could actually come in and play inside a little bit in certain formations as well, and he has international experience for club and country. It's not the snuggest positional fit, but it's in terms of cultural fit, I think it makes a lot of sense. And oh, by the way, Tata Martino and Julian Gressel go way back, and Julian Gressel, we talked about a million years ago at the start of the show, we talked about kids coming out of college and playing right away. Julian Gressel did that for a great Atlanta United team, and a manager who had zero experience in MLS or with college kids. He just that guy can play. That's my guy, and he was for the 2 years Tata was in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's weird. It's not a specific soccer move. It's not filling a hole that exists, both for him or for the team.
So the one thing I would say, we saw this last year when Messi wasn't on the field. They struggled to create chances. And if they go out this offseason and they bring in Julian Gressel and Luis Suarez,
I was just going to say that's a pretty good connection.
You could rest Messi for a month.
Yeah. Also, if they bring in Luis Suarez, they'll be better anyway.
Right, but what I'm saying is
Those
those are two elite chance creators who are not central midfielders, right? So they take what's already a strength and they magnify it, but they also make it so that you could rest Messi without the whole thing falling apart.
Campana good in the air.
Yep.
He doesn't always get a ton of service in that manner. John Rollins, hit us up. Your top free agents, guys, and what club do you think they should move to in MLS? There's a long list of free agents. Doyle did a great write-up on MLSsoccer.com.
Hey, thanks.
The tiers, and there's a ton of other coverage of what's going on in free agency because, as we said, that age went lower, and players also have more experience earlier, so quality is up.
Dave, where does Omir Fernandez go?
Everywhere. Every team in MLS should be clawing to get Omir Fernandez on their team. I think there's a decent track record now of leaves Red Bulls, good at soccer, actually does well other places. Brian White's on that list. Alex Muel's on that list. Derek Etienne's been on that list, which I'll go with Columbus.
Yeah.
I think Omir wants to play some soccer. I think he's proven that he can play in a couple different spots in the attack. He can rotate. He can counter press. And Columbus has a history of trusting MLS experience first. And they'll have to fill in potentially a couple holes. So, yeah.
So first of all, the research I did, and I wasn't able to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure Omir is the youngest free agency in MLS history, which is very cool. It's good to see. I think that the league and the players union have done an amazing job over the past few years getting that down to where it's a legitimate conversation now for guys to play out their contract and go find another team in MLS. It's fantastic. Does Nashville work? They've had a lot of success with former MLS guys.
Yeah.
Or former Red Bull guys. You put Omir as a second forward and you drop Hani to the point of the diamond.
Yeah. Or the other way around, because Omir played sort of in that pocket
Right.
for Red Bulls as well. I just said, if every team signs him, I will say that's a good signing for that team. I don't know if that's the elite spot for him to contend, but I think it makes Nashville better. But like even Joe Larry on his article for MLS.com, not as good as Doyle's, but also a good article. He had Colorado, right? Chris Armas is going to want guys that have played under him.
That's fair.
He will be a starter when he comes in, or I think you can pitch him on that spot for that team. So that one makes sense as well. But like, seriously, name a team in MLS. There's not one that I don't think Omir Fernandez makes better.
All right.
Was not going to be the first name I said.
What was your first name then?
I don't know. I have a bunch. I got a list. I went Wiebe style.
Yeah.
I think Jamiro Montero's interesting. He was a low-end DP last year in San Jose. I don't think he's a game-changing designated player. But we saw like what a Gadi Kinda did for SKC. We've seen what Albert
Gadi Kinda though.
What?
He's different.
He's a different type.
No.
of player.
I'm talking about that level of player out of
okay.
10. We've seen what Albert Rusnak has done in Seattle.
But I don't know if he's as good as either of those guys.
He's infinitely better defensively.
And
Fair.
But the point is, he's a 10 at a similar level, which is he is not Reynoso.
Yeah.
He is not Lucho. So he cannot be a 10 that creates the game for you and does everything. But on the right contract, he can come into a team that has really strong pieces and doesn't want or can't afford or doesn't want a 10.
So you talked about Omir Fernandez and the Colorado Rapids. What if it was Montero, Bassett, and Ronan in a 3-man midfield?
I'm not doing the low-end DP to the Rapids again because we already know they're going to do it. I don't care. We did it with Cabral. Mine was Seattle, which is if Seattle's going to spend big on this winger from Argentina and maybe spend big on a 9 or maybe not because they have to keep the players.
Probably not.
Around.
Craig Wiebe sort of in his end-of-year commentary said like 1 or 2 players. It seems like De La Vega out of Argentina, out of Lanús is one of those guys. And he mentioned basically we need more out of Raul.
And so you look at this and you say, bring Montero in, slide Rusnak back. That 3-man midfield together is as good as anyone else in Major League Soccer. Outside of João Paulo, neither of the other two are the best at their position. But as a unit, they can contend and do really good things. He's active. He works pretty hard. So I think if you put him on the field to start against LAFC, there's a decent chance that they're in the Western Conference.
The issue that
Josh Atencio, a racer.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tensi.
I don't think that midfield mix is going to change for the Sounders. I think what we saw last year when they were very good, they were just missing the attacking third pieces. What we saw last year, the midfield's were going to get. The issue with Jamiro Montero, from folks I've spoken with in both San Jose and Philadelphia, is that he is elite as a number 8 in this league. Like I think he's literally one of the best in the league as a number 8. He wants to be a number 10. He just that's the position he wants to play. Now, maybe at 30 years old, this is his last big or big-ish contract. Maybe he hears the right things and says, okay, if I'm going to get this money, if I'm going to get this, get on the field, then I'm going to have to embrace being the shuttler that I was for the Union at my absolute pinnacle. And he was. I think it was Bork Dochkal was the number 10, and Montero was a shuttler, and he was awesome. Could there be a return to Philly? They're going to play him. They played 51 games this year. They might play 60.
Yeah, or as a replacement for Bedoya.
There you go.
Yeah.
Does that happen, or is that bridge burned? If it's burned with Philly, is it working in Cincinnati? Because Cincinnati, they're going to play 1 million games this year as well.
And Moreno's a free agent.
And you could say, well, I think they'll bring Moreno back. But even if they do, you say, all right, Jamiro, you're going to start next to being a Nobodo, and Jamiro's going to come off the bench. And, when Lucho's not out, you'll play as a number 10. But for the most part, you're going to be a number 8. He's a fantastic player. If you can get him to buy into being a number 8, there's a million places he'd fit.
St. Louis would be interesting. If they're not going to go out and spend big on the open
really
market,
good call. That's a
an
really
8
good
DP.
call. Yeah.
And whether it is as a 10 or an 8, it's similar in their system.
Kansas City was one. I was just looking at the depth chart. If Gadi Kinda's gone, to go back to that,
if I was Kansas City,
Eric Tommy can play. You can play dual 8s basically with him and Tommy. And
I actually think if you put Montero on the left side of that 3, I think he would work really well with Daniel Shallowy. So that's a good point.
I would like to see Kansas City go a step higher with that spot.
Don't disagree.
To contend as Pulido finishes out his career, which was
and Johnny Russell too.
Yeah, which the Pulido signing was like a state of intention, and this would be less of that and more of this is a solid way to build a roster and continue on. So
you had Kellen Acosta in here. Do you want to throw out a destination or just somebody should?
LA Galaxy. Marky Delgado, Ricky Puig.
Show is just
he covers. How is Kellen Acosta not?
Should they sign Diego Palacios too and Maxime Crepeau?
I wouldn't put Palacios
Honestly,
on
they
any
should.
list
They
'cause
should.
He's gone.
Probably, yeah. I mean, they probably should try to sign Diego Palacios.
Yeah, why wouldn't they sign good players who have been to
they probably
back-to-back MLS
should.
Cups?
Like-
How is that galaxy brained of the galaxy? It's not. So Kellen Acosta, that was one. He's another player where there are like not a lot of teams he wouldn't make better. Atlanta would be interesting. As a guy to
would be
partner
interesting.
Muyumba, it's sort
I
of
like
similar
that a
role.
lot.
I didn't think about that, but
And especially because Muyumba is best when he has the freedom to hunt the game. And they're going to play a 4-2-3-1. They're going to play a double pivot. And just because it's a double pivot doesn't mean the two guys have the same exact responsibilities. And for Kellen, this is what I said on Monday. He's at his best for his national team future if he's playing as the guy who holds. If he's playing as the guy who sort of runs the show as a number 6 and kind of can orchestrate. And we know he has that range of passing with both.
6 months with Muyumba and with Thiago Almada and with Yakumakis.
And I would say he is not the same, but his set-piece service will fill in when Almada leaves.
Yeah.
Because that is a huge threat for Atlanta. He's not the same shooting from distance, but his service quality from corners or any wide set pieces keeps that a threat for you going through.
I hear the pain in Maria's voice, so we might have to speed up. And I know God knows we don't ever want to do that. We're like, oh, we're gonna do a quick show today, and then we get dug in. I'm gonna throw Diego Rubio. I know you don't want to do the Colorado Rapids son low end DPs.
No, Rubio's great, and I think he could play for every team in MLS.
I'm gonna do Diego Rubio and Nico Ladero package deal to FC Dallas. You have Velasco out.
Yeah, I don't hate that. That's good.
Long term. Rubio can play the 9 if you need him to, and so maybe that allows Jesus Ferreira to drop in a little bit. Maybe he plays more of that 10 role in midfield because he likes to drop in 10 second forward. Kamungo could play then on the right. It seems like seems like Areola might get sold to Liga MX. TBD on that one. Then Nico Ladero, if filling in for Paxton or Yaramendi's in there. I mean, who's the other 6? Leggett.
Yeah.
He's a depth piece there, or he could play that left wing role. You can do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. It's not perfect. It's not the perfect fit, but it's good.
It's fun. How about you? You got a perfect fit?
I don't really have a perfect fit, but Danny Musovski is an interesting player because if there's a next Brian White or Jeremy Abobasi, like a guy who has been kind of underappreciated by the casuals, but like people around the league knew that he's pretty good, and you look at the underlying numbers and you look at the box score numbers. Like Musovski's been a center forward for LAFC and RSL, and over the course of about, I think, 4,500 MLS minutes, he scores a goal every 160 minutes. It's a starting caliber center forward. Who needs that? Houston, probably. I think he would be an upgrade on Corey. Corey Barrett had a nice year, but
a lot of chances created where you need a guy who sniffs out space in the box.
Yeah, and I think Musovski tends to be better at that. The Quakes could use him because they don't have anything behind Jeremy Abobasi, who might be sold. Although the rumors on that have gone quiet, but there was interest in the summer. Dallas, I still think that Jesus Ferreira's best position is a second forward in a front two. I think this team has the pieces to go to a 3-5-2. So Musovski up front with Jesus Ferreira makes a lot of sense to me. Seattle, though, Rui Diaz is going to be back. Jordan Morris, probably the starting forward. I'm not sure Seattle need him, but if they want to push Jordan Morris back out to the wing, then Seattle will make a lot of sense, and Chicago's the other team.
Let me ask these two, because I hadn't thought about them before. One, NYCFC. He won't be a starter,
I like that a lot,
but all
actually.
the teams you named, he's not really.
Yeah.
He's a different forward. He's an MLS forward. He makes life easier for the young guys who struggled
That's a really
last
good
year.
shout, David, yeah.
So that would be interesting. It's not really in line with NYCFC's policies in the past.
But Bakrar is their young.
Right.
It's just, to go back to the point of raising levels, they needed more depth last year.
I would hope NYCFC walked out of last year saying we need to change some things, right? Like they got themselves in too far a hole with young guys who weren't ready to carry the team, and the season was already gone before they could rebuild. So that was one. The other one is Portland, which we know Niashkota's gone.
They said they're going to go sign a DP center forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
The team that should not sign a DP center forward is Toronto, right? And the idea with signing attacking high-end DPs is they make the other guys around them better, and they spent a gazillion dollars on the two Italians. And so in theory, just putting a competent productive number 9, which is what Danny Musovski has been his entire MLS career, like that should work very easily. But if I'm Danny Musovski, I don't know if I want to be part of that team.
Yeah, go get the money, Danny.
Yeah.
Connor Haynes, which team do you see Kai Kamara equaling Landon Donovan's goal record at next season?
Toronto FC.
Question. Yeah.
I mean, it's a team. He's played 10 different. I think it's
Let's say it's got to be a team. We got to give him to a team that he's not played for, which
11
narrows
stints total because he had 2 stints with the Crew. Everyone else he's only played for 1.
St. Louis.
I was gonna say, I said put him on a Concacaf Champions Cup team where he can be a super sub and they have a bunch of competitions.
They need a backup for Klaus. He has shown he can fit a couple different models. You can play
press.
in through his feet, similar.
Yeah, he can press.
Yeah.
More of a target late on.
So there you go.
Okay. All right.
The other one would be Orlando, as like we don't know how long Duncan McGuire is here. He can play minutes against CCL.
If you still have Barrial and a right back who can cross for Cincinnati,
Dagger Dan could whip it across.
I'm just throwing him out there. We'll see.
I don't think
Not for
Cincinnati.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it rolling here. Free agency is an interesting topic. Coaching Carousel has been. It's starting to winnow down the opportunities. Sandro Schwartz hired as the head coach of the New York Red Bulls. Fabrizio Romano says Emil Forsberg deal is done. So we're waiting on the official side on that one. New England are still looking for someone with MLS coaching experience. And they've got a lot of interviews out with people who have that. Don't know who that person's going to be. DC, I believe, have a group of finalists. And Kevin Case asks, on the report that Bruce Arena is a finalist for DC, Doug McIntyre reported that Bruce is going to be reinstated. I know nothing more than that. How good of a fit would Bruce be back in the nation's capital? Would the youngest GM in the league paired with one of the older managers and a roster in flux be a good fit? And I got to tell you, it just does not seem like it would be a fit at all.
Yep.
To me. If I'm Ali McKay, I don't know why I would bring in a guy who's done my job for many years and not just thinks, but probably knows he could do the job, like to be my first head coach. That doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with DC. And then in Montreal, Chris Lyle says, what's going on with Montreal's coaching search? I feel like I haven't heard them genuinely being connected with anyone, and yet they're making a lot of roster moves. I don't know, man.
Well, so Olivier Renard has said it's his.
Yeah, it's his team.
Like that was part of what happened with all the coaches that they've had, which is it's his project. He wants to pick the players. He wants to pick the players so that he can dictate how the game is played. It was part of the issue with Nance, not the full thing, and that's not 100% why he left, but it was part of what Wilfred was looking for in leaving was more influence, more control. So the fact that the players are being moved and brought in without a coach is not shocking at all. The other thing I would add is I think Columbus and LAFC and Houston going so far into the season.
Austin FC trades for first overall pick in MLS. Oh, re-entry draft. I thought it was the super draft.
Okay, while he's going on this, go check the re-entry order.
Yeah.
Go see who you think they might want.
So I think those have delayed some of the interview process for some of these teams because
those are
about
obvious candidates.
We've connected the Columbus guys a
Courtois,
bunch.
Dame.
But I think Houston and LAFC as well. Mark Dos Santos, Ante Razov, Brendan Burke, Aurelian Collin. These are all names that will probably be connected to a Montreal.
You think Aurelian?
Well, I think it's a club that's saying we're the club that gives you your first shot.
Oh, okay.
Right? They are not the because same as players, they don't spend at a high level. So you are looking for managers that are interested.
Give me Aurelian Collin to CF Montreal right now and 1,000 times in the future.
I think they're all coaches
Please
that will be on lists.
License to post over under 65 leagues games for the next Montreal head coach. Slam the under.
Yeah, under.
Pound the under. 65 games? That's like 2 full seasons.
It's like a season and a half.
No, league games. League games.
League games.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 full seasons. All right. Random notes. Do you have any reentry guys?
Yeah. Who are you taking first in the reentry?
No, I'm not doing. Though Toronto just made a trade to get into the top 5 of the reentry draft. So
you won't lower yourself to reentry analysis.
I don't want to do it on the fly because I do not even know who's available via the reentry draft at this point.
Morgan Tenza, what's the most exciting game of 2024, and it cannot be MLS Cup?
I mean, Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah, hell is real.
That's way up there.
Wait, you said 2024?
Yeah.
Oh,
predicting next year.
Yeah, predicting next year. Oh, I thought you were saying the first rematch of those two teams. So that's a good one.
Yeah.
Inter Miami somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
Inter Miami Crew, maybe?
God, if Chiellini hadn't retired, it would have been Inter Miami versus LAFC just for Suarez versus Chiellini. I mean, that's
a good one.
Yeah, that's a vibe.
Carlos Vela's return to LAFC while wearing Galaxy colors.
I knew I could get you
off this show. This is tough.
Bought in here. Adam, bad guy Adam. Just a comment on the topic of Inter Miami. Lionel Messi, the greatest player of all time, is an MLS player. The playoffs without him were a great product with great results. You guys and the league needs to not slip up too much in the Messi coverage next year outside of how well his team does because MLS is strong overall. So Adam is saying don't be Messi stands.
Dude, this is a team.
Season.
This is a team that just gives you like this is a show that gives you 20 minutes on Jamiro Montero. All right, like I think we did a pretty good job of
don't look at us.
Right?
Point your fingers somewhere.
Point your fingers elsewhere.
Anywhere else.
And I've still got Stephen Cleveland notes that we didn't even get to.
Messi got covered a ton during the League's Cup. Do you know why? Because he was on one of the great all-time heater, maybe the greatest all-time heater this league has ever seen.
And
he delivered in every single conceivable way, and then they won. So, yeah, he got a lot of coverage.
You know who else we covered a lot? Columbus
Yep.
and LAFC because they went to the final, and one of them won. It's kind of how it works the more games you play and the more competition.
The more interesting it is, the more that we're going to talk about. And sometimes we find things interesting that are definitely not Lionel Messi.
Like Carlos Vela to the LA Galaxy.
Or matchmaking Diego Rubio with FC
Here,
Dallas.
let me give you spend 10 minutes. Graham Zusi, put him somewhere else.
Matt Showalter. I don't think Zeus and Rogers' departure, presumably from Kansas City, has been discussed. Maybe
send
something
him to
on
Orlando.
their legacy.
Send him to Orlando for that Concacaf Champions Cup
So I
run.
screwed up. I thought they were retiring. It just made sense to me that, like, oh, they're retiring. My understanding is that they are not retired. They're waiting to see if they get the proper offers that they would want to continue their careers. So Graham Zusi could play in different colors
Unreal.
than the blue.
Throw Roger on the side of
light
the Philly
blue.
Diamond. Let's just.
Yeah, that's actually it's a great call.
No one. They should not. All right, whatever.
No,
they can do whatever they
honestly,
want.
Orlando should sign Zusi as the backup right back and Dax as the backup D mid because they're both Orlando guys. They both have international experience, and this team is trying to win.
Well, the press conferences for Dax, less so for Graham. He's more of a quiet leader.
He doesn't give you much in the press conference.
Well, Dax is the guy who introduces Lo Celso to everyone. He says, "This is MLS."
Scott Foltz, all the teams in the opening rounds had seen each other at least twice. Crew and LAFC hadn't played at all. Pure soccer question. Setting aside pageantry and other intangibles, was the best of three in the playoffs wasted in the opening round? Should it have been a best of three later? Now, look, Scott, I understand what you're saying. Certainly not an MLS Cup. No way. And he's got massive in his in yellow and black in his logo. So he's a Crew fan. You don't want it to be three for a champion. But I thought it was the proper decision, at least in soccer, because it sort of culled the playoffs down. Like teams that shouldn't go on, who didn't deserve to, who didn't have the level, were pushed out, and the better teams stayed.
Wiebe, is that your next hack gonna be playoff format?
I should.
The format.
I should do that.
Yeah.
That's part of the Sicko collection.
But I
Next
agree with
capsule.
you. And I think what we saw in the end of like Houston and Columbus making it conference finals, winning MLS Cup was like teams that played a little bit more, where historically it's the one team you play tries to shut everything down and hope for PKs. Got through, I think, because they had time to build and figure things out in a playoff setting and sort of grow through the playoffs going into the single elimination. So I think it worked out well, but I understand the point. It's always in MLS Cup, teams that don't know each other very well because they're in different conferences. Like, I can tell you this every year when you go to a conference finals and you get a text from Ben Baer of like, this was the last time these teams played, because it's always like from 9 years ago, played on the moon while the scoreboard was burning down, and like you have to remember the game. That's just the nature of MLS Cup, but it makes it fun.
Last one here. I hear you, Maria. Mayan, give me your very early predictions.
Maria keeps saying it's not her, by the way, in my ears.
Very early predictions for top 5 players in next season's Golden Boot race. We are already seeding Golden Boot draft content.
Messi, Suarez, Cucho, Buanga, Bupenza.
Yakumakis, I would move in for Bupenza.
Yeah, Yakumakis is a great shout. Brian White,
Sam Surridge,
Omir Fernandez.
Oh, and on that
Diego
note,
Rubio.
enjoy your week, everyone. Your cue to start digging through the re-entry available list.
Honestly,
right
we won't
now.
know the Golden Boot winner until the SuperDraft happens.
Fair.
Then we'll know which Orlando forward will win.
Alec Hughes.
There you go.
All right, that's it for us. Thank you for listening along as the offseason begins. We'll be back on Monday. Monday will be our final show of 2023. It'll be a SuperDraft preview, and then, of course, a bunch of moves will happen in the meantime. But we'll get ready for Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, the MLS SuperDraft on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. And then after that, we're off into the... I don't know. Into
the wild blue yonder.
Yeah, into your
for a couple of weeks.
Beautiful memories for a couple of weeks. If you want to go back and listen to the archives, feel free to do that. In the meantime, we'll see you on Monday. Adios, everyone.